How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This week, Death Stranding 2 is releasing, so I decided that we'd take a look at Death Stranding 1 here in the channel. First, we're going to look at the game as a whole, the lighting system, some of the geometry and textures that we see in game, and then we're going to go into Blender and take a look at the Sam Porter character model, which I think it's a pretty cool model. It's very interesting to look at. There's a lot of things that we can learn here. So let's get started. So Death Stranding is a game that I know it has been around for a while, and I'm just picking it up. I'm brand new to the IP. A lot of people have called it a walking simulator. I think it's more of like a DoorDash simulator, but that aside, I'm not saying it as an insult. I'm saying it because that's what it is. You are a delivery guy. However, there are several mechanics that, even though I was one of the people who say I'm not going to play a walking simulator, now that I've tried the game, I am very impressed and I really like the game. The reason why I like the game is because, and talking a little bit about the game mechanics, is the traversal. Often in open world games, and that has become a pain for me recently with this huge open world games, especially like things like Assassin's Creed. The games are so big, the worlds are so big that you need to be traveling by horse all the time. And when that happens, you're spending like 5 to 10 minutes just pushing forward and seeing your character go by. You're not just walking forward. There's a lot of things that happen along the way, like the terrain. Actually, your character conforms to the terrain. He steps on rocks and all that. There's also physical momentum, which you don't see in... I think this is the only game that I've seen the actual physical momentum of when you're moving forward. Like if you're running too fast and there's a slope, then there's momentum and you'll literally just roll downhill. Now, when we look at the visuals of this game as a whole, if you tell me this game came out in 2025, I will believe you, because the fidelity that this game has, there are certain places where you can see like low res textures in some of the cliffs, but still overall, the characters, the texture detail on the character is very high, and pretty sure it was very high for the time. The way that the environment is laid out, there is very minimal pop-in. There is, well, granted, I'm playing like the latest PC version that they have, and I'm pretty sure they've done a lot of updates after the initial release of Death Stranding, but the way that it performs and the way that all the assets are laid out on screen is amazing. There's a lot of things that have been done in the game, and it's not only due to the geometry or the textures, but it's also due to the lighting conditions. The lighting conditions in this game, the way that everything is lit intentionally, not only when you're outside, but when you are inside of the installation. Another thing that I found interesting, and I had to do my research on this one because I don't have access to the Decima engine, is the way that they do lighting. It is some sort of mix between baked lighting and dynamic. When it comes to lighting, you don't have to choose like one or the other. There is an in-between where you can use baked lighting to allow for more performance, and while also using dynamic lighting and keeping like that time of day and seeing like the good shadows of your character. So from what I heard in this, the new Death Stranding 2 is using a proof chain, which is something similar to what we have in Unreal Engine, which is called RTX GI, something that you can use in order to get better performance while not using ray tracing. This is one of the reasons why this game works so well, is because it's not using ray tracing. Ray tracing, while it does enhance certain things, the performance cost that it has, it's not really worth it, at least in my eyes, and at least not for right now. Those are my impressions, and again, if you're like me and just think this is a FedEx simulator or walking simulator, please try it. You're not gonna regret it. And actually the game is on sale right now, so this is a fantastic time to go and get that game on Steam. I highly recommend that you play it on PC. PC will always be the superior platforms. Death Stranding 2 is only available for PS5, so that's your only choice. But I think that the PC version, it looks amazing, it performs amazing, the high frame rate, everything is, because this game is super well optimized, and the port to the PC, I think it's pretty good. I don't know how it was when it came out, but right now the port is amazing. So game is on sale, go test it out. Now let's go look at the model in Blender. All right, here we are in Blender, and we have the model of Sam Porter, also known as Norman Reedus. And as you can see, one of the things I did is I found a facial texture that has kind of like this cyberpunk thing, which I thought was pretty cool, so I stuck with it. His suit, it's pretty reminiscent of kind of like the first suit that you get in the game. And we have the whole thing with the cargo holder in the back and the hood. There's also a version of the hood that's up for when it rains and all that. If you played Death Stranding, you're probably very familiar with everything that I'm talking about. But yeah, I just want you to see the character fully texture. I got the hair in. I didn't get the hair cards for the beard or the eyebrows because those require specific shader. The eyes also has a very specific shader. It also has the tiers, since it's a important part of the game, they have their own very specific asset too. So if you want to see more about the Death Stranding assets, leave me a comment down below. The more comments that I get, the more I know people are interested, and we'll do more videos on Death Stranding, because there's also vehicles, weapons, and all sorts of stuff that we can look at. You can see the textures, pretty awesome. I don't have him with the HDRI, so we can see the normal maps. Of course, it's not the complete shader. I'm only using the diffuse and normal, so I'm not using the roughness, which is why it looks a little bit different than from what you see in game. But I do love how the textures look in here. So let's go into the geometry. All right, here we have the model of Daryl. I'm sorry, Porter. Sorry, you'd hear me say Daryl a couple times because more familiar with The Walking Dead than Death Stranding. But here we have the model of Sam, and you can see the density of this model. It's not super dense, but it's quite a bit. This whole model, and you know, you have other bits like the cargo and stuff, but just this model is 120,000 triangles, which, so if you've seen my other videos, you'll know that this is pretty much a pattern that we've been seeing with games as of late. Even though this is a game that is several years old now, this would still fit today's standard from what we've seen. 120,000 triangles, pretty much a game from nowadays. I usually don't analyze faces because they all always come from the same base mesh for the most part. However, this one is a little bit different, so let's talk about that. Usually when you get characters nowadays, you scan people, and which is what they did here. That's not something super new, but nowadays I think they do it more often than what they used to before. What they do is they scan people, they put them in a booth, and then this mesh is cleaned up, probably in ZBrush, and then is remeshed. There's sometimes some artifacts left after the scanning process, so you have to do some cleanup. And what I would do usually after that would be to wrap a mesh around it. In this case, I don't know if that's what they did, but what I would do is just wrap a base mesh around it. You can see, if you have seen my other videos, the flow is always standard when it comes to human features. So again, even though this is a scan, you can see there's a particular flow around the eyes, around the nose, the flow around the lips, and the one that creates the philtrum. The philtrum is this little thing that you have here in between your nose and your lips. It's usually the same kind of geometry when we are talking about flow. Same goes with the rest of the body. This little indentation that you see right here, even though it ends in triangle, it doesn't matter that much, but you can see the flow, how the flow is directed. So you can see it ends in the neck right here, like around the clavicle area. It's a very common area for video games to end the head mesh, especially if they have a lot of suits and things that you can customize later. When it comes to modularity, this is very common because not all the suits will end here in the neck. So cutting your character here, like at the base of the neck, is probably not the best of ideas. So that's why they're usually extended a little bit further all the way down to the clavicle. As you can see, this mesh is completely open because there's really no reason that I've seen. If you know it, please let me know in the comments down below. But personally, I haven't seen a particular reason why would you close the mesh. So that's why we see a lot of the game mesh, especially for humans, they're usually open at the bottom. Now this mesh has eye sockets, of course, and one of the important things that this has is a mouth bag. The mouth bag of this character is particularly big. Also, you can see the nostrils, which this is new for me. Usually the nostrils like have an indentation on the inside, and that's where they're end. They're not that deep. In here, they're pretty deep. Same thing with this mouth bag. I don't have teeth and tongue for this mesh, but usually you'd see something sticking out, which is the tongue, and the teeth would be inside. You need the mouth bag because when your character talks up into the mouth, you don't want to see those back faces, you want to see actual polygons. All right, so let's move on to the UVs. Let's look at the UVs real quick for this. All right, so for the face, you can see that the geometry is stuck all the way to the sides of the UVs, and it's quadrangulated. I always think this is pretty interesting to do because it's not easy to get your UVs triangulated like that and also prevent distortion. But as you can see here, if you want to see the texture, you can see like the mouth, open mouth, and you can see over here the eyelids, this kind of like cyberpunk things that I mentioned in the beginning. And you can also see the hair is part, you can even see the nose hair. That's how much detail is inside this texture. Like I said, this is like 100% a scanned textures. You can see a little bit of his hair is part of this. That's always something that you will see in certain characters, because when you're using hair cards, you always need to have a texture underneath. Otherwise, the amount of hair cards that you would need would be off the charts. Look how close I'm getting to the texture and how detailed it looks. So you can see like the pores of his skin, the little imperfections, like this little scar that he has here. I don't know if he was fighting with zombie or not, but you can see all the portions here of underneath his eyes, around his mouth, all the freckles that he has and the little hairs. I think it's pretty impressive. So the hair, not gonna focus on the topology because it's just a strip, but you can see here the texture. Let me show you the texture without it. You can see the little strands of hair. Hair cards are usually done with an alpha. The hair cards in Death Stranding are pretty impressive, especially when he goes into the water. All right, I just hit the head, so you can see that the suit is completely open except for like in the bottom. The shoes are actually closed mesh. I imagine because you switch them over so often. However, the suit is not one single piece. As far as I haven't gone like too further in the game, but I don't know if you can have different kinds of pants and different kinds of like upper torso. But all of the meshes that I saw, they're always divided in upper part and lower part, and kind of like this little middle part that covers the crotch area and the butt area. You can see how the flow of the geometry goes, and if we isolate it, you can see the whole thing. There's even some detail modeled on the back here, and these little straps and these flaps over here that they do move. This mesh has a lot of bones when it comes to the rig. Then we go into the arms, and as you can see, they're open and they're complete all the way down to the glove. The gloves, as always, is just a cylinder, but we do have a little bit of different geometry because of the protection of the hand. Now, he does have several accessories that go on. I also saw the accessories for the exosuit. So again, if you want to see those, let me know, comment down below. But you can see that a lot of detail has been modeled, even though some surfaces of the hard surface portions, like again, this thing here on his shoulder, They do not have chamfer. We have seen this areas chamfers so to capture lighting a little bit better, but that's being done with the normal map. So again, whenever you want to save a little bit of optimization, you can do it, and this proves that things can still look awesome. All right, now let's go into the textures because the textures are very interesting. All right, so here in the UVs, this texture is very interesting because you can see that not only does it contain the portion for the suit, but there's also a little portion of the UVs here for the hard surface. So you can see how everything here is laid out. And if you've watched my other videos, you'll notice something that we haven't seen in a while, which is the mirroring thing. Usually things are mirrored outside of the 0 to 1 space to the right. In this case, I'm guessing it's part of the Decima engine where they actually mirror to the negative space because it goes from 0 to 1. This will be the 1 space, and then the negative space will be on the other side, which is where the gloves are located. But you can see that, again, saving texture real estate, it's used with the gloves specifically because they need to be symmetrical. So why put them here and occupy more space? They're thrown all the way to the side and they inherit exactly the same texture because this texture tiles all around. But if we get out of here, you can see how everything is detailed here. You can see the numbers. This texture is 2K, by the way. And you can see like the porter name here. Now let's look at the texture for the hard surface. So we have, this is not the texture for like the backpack, but this is the texture for the other pieces that go into the suit with the hard surface portion. And as you can see, everything is thrown into this little 2 squares, which is something that I personally have not seen before. This is brand new to me. And this is why I told you it was interesting to look at these textures, because they decided like from the whole texture to have a specific portion for this hard surface geometry. And what it looks to me is like they UV'd the whole thing, the hard surface stuff, into the 0 to 1 space and then just shrunk it down and put it all the way inside here. And you can see like you can still read kind of what it has on the several pieces that go on top of his suit, and everything is laid out in a very parallel and rectangular fashion, especially with these devices, because that's pretty much how you would see this, especially in the cylinder area. But yeah, very, very cool looking. You can see all the bits and bobs from the clips that he has on his shoulder around here. And this also works because from what I saw, there's a lot of masks and a lot of various different maps that create the LODs for these textures, not only for the hard surface, but also for the suit. This thing, like the shaders, must be really complex because it had a lot of maps when I brought the model out. All right, here are the UVs of the back portion. There are some couple things that are missing here. Now you can see how everything is laid out here. I just opened the normal map because it's a little bit easier to see the detail from this whole thing. And you can see where everything is laid out. Even those here, this little island, this little button is like right in between these two. Very interesting stuff, how everything is put together when it comes to the normal maps. So you can see how much detail this thing has. And when it comes to the quality of an asset, it doesn't necessarily depend on the amount of geometry because there's so much that you can do with good normal map making. So you can see all the details that can be found inside these normal maps that translate into the game once you see it with all the shaders and the lighting. Okay, that was the Sam Porter model. Do you like to see more Death Stranding stuff? Let me know in the comments down below. We'll do more videos. There's a lot more assets that we can revisit about this game. So let me know if you're interested. Remember to leave a like on the video. It really helps the channel. There's a subscribe button if you haven't subscribed. We look at models from AAA games, and we're also going to start looking at models from more indie games. I want to spotlight those in the channel as well more often. Thank you so much for watching all the way to this point. I'll see you in the next one.
Sam, this is Die Hard. Dead men explain how to use the cuffs, right?